Hi, I am Master Kanbei, also known as multi.topic talk. Today we got a a guest we already had before on the channel, a very good guest that was willing to come back. So now you can present yourself.
Hey everyone, it's good to be back. It's Kantbei. Some of you may know me from Discord. I'm an around 1200 level player who specializes mostly in fog.
So this is good. And now I just realized I forgot to plug my camera. So I will plug my camera. So let's do this. You are now in charge of the replay commentary and the replay setting. Is there anything you would like to start off with?
Yeah, so the first thing that I noticed about this map is it's actually an old map in League. This has been in League like I think back in June or maybe August 2021. So I remember playing in this before. There are a couple of changes though. The big one that I noticed is like there are now subs here and here, which gives you vision on your opponent's weak side. This didn't used to be here before, and I think it makes like the one base side, which is for the bottom player here on the right, for the top player here on the left. It makes it a lot weaker in my opinion, because similar to like the last game we played on Witchcraft Trials, right? Having vision like this means that you can react perfectly to their builds and get yourself like early information on like what they're trying to do. So any kind of like aggressive opener, we could say, like a fast recon, for example, from this side, is automatically dead because of this sub. In Fog, like if you open recon, say day 3, day 4, those are the common timings. If you open a recon very fast and try to do damage, they only work because your opponent gets greedy and doesn't build a tank very fast because they don't think you're going to do that. But if they know you're going to do that because of like the vision, then recons are automatically dead. um, and that's the kind of the reason why in standard, while there are some maps that recon is really strong, they're generally like not very good for most players because if they see a recon, then they can just drop a tank and then it's automatically answered. The
I've
other
got a
thing I
quick
noticed here,
question there. You were saying
go
this
ahead.
side here is the weak side, but I
Mm-hmm.
always thought it was the strong side because these two bases are really close from each other, and I do think it's easier to send reinforcement to this than this. But this is just my experience, so maybe I'm wrong, but I'm actually surprised you are saying this side is the weak side. Can you explain furthermore why it's the weak side?
Yeah, sure. So on most maps, you would be correct. Like this side would generally be considered strong because it has a two base. But there's a peculiarity in this map where the neutral base is actually kind of centralized. It's not forced to go this direction. Like any reinforcements here can actually go to the left side as well, and it can do it. I haven't calculated out like the full timings, but it's more or less even. Maybe this side is like slightly slower, but not enough to be actually significant. So you actually have two choices here, right? You can commit two bases here to the right, or you can commit this base to the left. The problem with committing two bases here to the right is if your opponent opens the way I did, which is using two bases to reinforce as well as the airport, it will almost always win against just the two base. So, like, if they do like their best play versus this, it kind of loses. So that's why it's usually better for you to send reinforcements to the left. Here, here though, we get into like some kind of mind games. Because like other strong players sometimes will send this neutral base here to the right, kind of betting on the fact that the opponent might think you'll do the exact same thing with them and try to like send less here so they can hold out their defense here, right? So in all of these maps, it's kind of this tense dynamic where you're trying to win on one side faster than you lose on the other. So you kind of have to try and judge how much you need to send to each side. On this map in particular, death balling is not as strong as on other maps, I'd say. just because of like how easy it is for one base, in particular this one, to get cut off. Um, like this one can be completely stifled if your opponent controls this area here with a mountain, like one or two artilleries here with some infantry, and this side is completely shut up from ever reinforcing into the center, unless they go like this weird, really long path to the left, or you get like a lander here, which I guess in like super late game could be fine, but both are like, kind of weird things to do. They're not intuitive, so I think most players wouldn't do them. Um, the lander is also a bit weaker because there's now a sub here, so it can't even use these tiles. I guess it could stay here, but like a 12k investment so that you can move one extra tank each turn, because it is going to be one tank. There are no spaces where this can really unload two unless it's here, but this isn't really a great spot. Like this would be much better generally. So yeah. There's all kinds of like tension in this map because of how the lakes are laid out.
That's very interesting. I like your response. And this is funny because when I look back on how I played this map a lot, I tend to use that base to central there. So you are right. Even if I have the feeling it's the stronger side and I just reinforced my weaker one, I just realized I played the map properly without even knowing it.
Yep. So the other thing to note here that I really like is that there are B boats on the HQ. Um, the B boats are important because given how vulnerable the HQs are early on and how far the bases are, it does force out a response like a fast recon. Otherwise, like a Sammy APC cheese, like day 2 APC, could be threatening the HQ, although one could also argue maybe it's irrelevant because with the sub and the recon, you'll probably see the timing coming. So maybe it's not so important, but maybe it's just a holdover from the old map design. But I think it's more or less fine. The other choice here is like, do you leave the B boat here forever, like to just make your HQ a bit safer in the mid game? Or do you use your B boat to transport infantry from this base eventually towards the center? In this game, I opted to do it from the top. You chose not to do it. Based on that, I do think it's kind of forced that you eventually have to use the B boat. It just accelerates so much infantry to the center and gives you so much additional income and presence that it's if you don't do it, you fall behind, and we do see that kind of later on this game. The
Okay,
last thing
that's
to
interesting.
note here, yeah, the last thing to note here is like the starting recons and the opposing com towers. So one of the first goals on this map will generally be to like remove this recon. It's either gonna be like a fast mech or an artillery. Those are really the only options. Waiting for copter, probably not great. It's probably just too slow, and also the
Takes
copter is
too
gonna take
long.
chip damage if it tries to hit the recon on a property. Yeah,
It takes too
and
long.
yeah, yeah, that taking too long is like the other main issue. So, RT or mech seems like the main question here.
What
I'm
do you
not too sure.
prefer? What do you prefer?
It also depends on like the COs, but generally I would go for artillery.
Okay,
The reasoning behind that is if you're gonna go with the assumption that this base should reinforce here, for example, if we're looking at the bottom player's perspective, if this base should be reinforcing here, then a mech is never gonna contribute to that offensive really well. Like 8 moves into the game, right? A mech is just too slow. It's not gonna do enough, and then infantry might just hit it, and then it's useless.
yeah,
An artillery is always going to be useful here because you assume you'll have unit advantage. You don't need that many units to like block this area off with an artillery and a couple of infantry. So artillery is also useful in that end. Um, so yeah, for
I
those reasons, I think like artillery is better. Also, there's some ideas here of like artillery being used to snipe the HQB boat if it stays there. So
yeah,
it's additional pressure to force it off. Maybe makes your HQ cap ideas a bit easier later towards the game. So there are
yeah.
a couple of really good things for artillery. If you're playing maybe like Sammy,
It's the only
mech
seal
might
I'm
be good.
thinking.
Yeah, Sammy, maybe Adder in tier 4, although I don't think I'd pick Adder here personally, but if you did pick him, Mech here might be okay for Adder. Adder does love mechs a lot. Um, the other potential mech user is Cole, but I don't think this is a very good Cole map. There's just not enough roads, in my opinion. Um, like here in this huge center area, there are basically no roads. Here, like there are some, but it's fairly easy to push you off of them, and it's not clear to me you can always take good engagements. So
Yeah.
Cole seems like a suboptimal pick compared to like Adder or Jake.
Yeah, Jake looks really strong in this map.
Yeah, I think Jake and maybe Jess are both really, really strong here. Um, Probably Jake is better for most players, but Jess I could see still being viable. The airports are on contesting sides. It's very unlikely that there's going to be lots of copter versus copter early on, so Jess is going to be fine there. Um, Jess also has like that refuel quirk with her powers, so that just keeps your sub alive a lot longer, which
Yeah.
is vision is always nice, and like unremovable vision is even better.
Yeah.
So a Jess sub basically means you'll always have vision.
Yeah.
uh, so let's dive into the game then. First couple of moves, fairly obvious, like infantry builds here. You do like one kind of, I guess, not really suboptimal because you're going for the base immediately.
Yeah.
But as you can see from my end, like, I tried to cap this property, even though like I didn't finish capping it and I end up going for the base. At this point, I hadn't fully calculated my opening, so it just gives you more kind of flexibility. Like if you want to cap this before heading for this, maybe do some kind of weird timing with the vehicles, like a faster tank. That's entirely possible. In
Yeah.
the end, I didn't opt for it because, like, again, the sub vision tells you immediately if that's what they did, and then you can react to it. So I didn't think I'd be able to get that much done with it. But if you wanted to play like an aggressive weak side style, like this base going here and maybe even a copter eventually heading here, this is entirely viable to get like fast tanks in this area because the
Okay.
main threat for you here is you don't want to get choked off in this area. Like these two opposing mirror chokes are
Yeah.
kind of like the key early game ideas for this map. If you get blocked off too fast, it's really hard to get back into the game if you don't block them off as well. And then later on, there's ideas where they leave very little units here to like stop this base entirely and just shift everything through the center and smash you into the side, and then you lose both fronts, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the danger you have to kind of play around. Sasha in particular, I think, could benefit from this kind of style where you cap the city early on, which is why I bring this up even. Because Sasha already gets like really fast vehicle timings with a plus 100 from every building.
Yeah.
So getting an even faster timing is just really strong. Um,
That's good to know because I like to play Sasha a lot, even if I don't play her that often because I think Sturm is just broken. So most of the time you will see me using Sturm, but I still enjoy a lot of Sasha. And usually in casual, if my friends are telling me, "Look, we do tier one," I almost always pick Sasha. She's just a fun seal to play. She's in my own opinion, she's very balanced. She's much more balanced than most seals.
yeah, Sasha's an interesting pick. She's definitely like viable in T1, but the funny thing is like there are certain COs even in like lower tiers that she doesn't do that well against. So for example, Jess is a pretty common one, Grim is a pretty common one. Like they both kind of do well versus Sasha
Yeah,
than compared to like, another T3 CO, right? So she's very interesting to me for that reason. And
yeah. The
her
the
power.
only seal that struggle against Sasha are seals like Drake or Olaf or Hawke or Von Bolt. But even there, Von Bolt and Hawke, I feel like they have just a bit better of a day to day because I think being stronger in terms of firepower is better than having a bit more money because at some point in the game, uh, money does not really matter anymore because both player can have high tech.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and like that basically aligns with like the theory of high level players around Sasha. So the common like tier one triangle, as it's called, and this is a soft triangle. This isn't like always true. Is that Sasha counters Hawk because she puts on a lot of early aggression with like the money, and then she also stops him from ever using his powers. So he's basically playing with just plus 10 attack versus plus 10% income. Um, but Von Bolt counters Sasha. The reason
Yeah.
for that is Von Bolt doesn't really care about his powers. If he gets it, it's nice, but you don't really win a game as Von Bolt because of your powers. Um, and at a certain point, like yeah, the plus 10 stats is more important than just having plus 10% more tanks, for example.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where Sasha shines. Like the early vehicle timings and like having a bit more vehicles early on lets her pressure certain COs. But Von Bolt doesn't really struggle versus her that much because the plus 10 def makes it really hard to fight him. And yeah, he can just like stall up to like 30, 40 units and then he's completely fine because you don't really have 10% more unit count as Sasha, you just have 10% more vehicles in theory. Sasha can, of course, tech up, and that's like one of her saving graces in that matchup. So it's not always clear, but generally Von Bolt is considered to counter Sasha. And then, of course, Hawk counters Von Bolt because he gets the plus 10 attack, which is pretty big versus Von Bolt, especially when people struggle to fight him. And then his power is just so much better. So if Von Bolt can't kill Hawk early on, then Hawk's power will just ruin his day, like day 15 onwards, stuff
Yeah,
like
if
that.
if
So
there's a stalemate, global damage always win.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. So yeah, that's the soft triangle in tier one taking effect. I didn't mention here like Sturm, Grit, or Xavier because they kind of don't always fall into tier one, and they don't fall into like this soft triangle kind of idea. So yeah, that's why I excluded them.
Yeah,
So
Sturm is just broken. I just don't like him. You should not be part of Global League.
he can be fine on certain maps. There are certain maps where he's like really strong. In Fog, generally, he's a bit more palatable because the terrain isn't as heavy. But this map in particular, I think Sturm might be a bit too strong. Like he would be my pick in general.
Yeah,
Uh,
I pick him a lot in this map, and I beat players only because I'm Sturm, not because I'm better than them.
I mean, being able to recognize like better CO picks is also a skill. So I wouldn't necessarily want to be better than them. But yeah, like this kind of thing where you can go from the airport to the city instantly as Sturm is pretty good in my opinion because this space takes so long to come online. It actually gives you like a nice timing where you cap these two at the same time, and then these two infantry can like go in towards the center. It's just really nice to look at. I'm not sure if like it's you know really like breaks the map, for example, but I think it's really nice to look at, and that's one of the things I look for when I go for Sturm picks.
What I like with Sturm is doing the chain in the bottom, base, city, city, airport. Usually I use my left side to spread on top, and I just capture all bottom with Sturm because he don't care about terrain, and there's a chain with Sturm that doesn't happen with other seals.
Yeah, that's fairly reasonable. Here I noticed like your infantry didn't cap the city immediately. I guess you're going for this city first.
Yeah. I like to send my infantry on the front line first because I need to extend before picking my bottom cities, if we can call them that way, because the presence of your soldier on the front line is more important than the back line.
Okay, so yeah, in theory it's correct. The issue here like is usually how do I put this? It's about like not just how early you have the presence, but also how strong that presence is. So because you
Uh
send this infantry here, right? This infantry, like whatever is capping here, is always going to be a bit slower to the front compared to me, who capped this immediately, like income aside, right?
yeah.
So the idea with like back caps first, at high level play is that you're a bit slower here, but when you do arrive, you have more units, and like if they overextend into you even slightly, you just punish it really hard. And
Uh,
like there's even ideas where like they can't actually gain any advantage even if they rush towards the front lines faster, because even if, like for example, you cap this city, for example, right? Like it wouldn't even matter because I will get it back like eventually, and it's forced. Like if you try to hold on to it, you kind of just lose the game. It's a
yeah.
blunder. Uh, that's the idea with like capping these cities first. The only time it's kind of like really acceptable at high level play to go for like a front cap first is if, for example, this city led to another city. So, for example, if there was a city here or a city here or anywhere within reach of this, then it's acceptable to forego the city at the back for this one because it's technically more. Actually, the income is even. Like if you do that, um, but yeah, in this case, like you automatically just lose 1,000 funds because you did this. It doesn't like instantly lose the game, but it is an inefficiency in the opening.
So if because I'm Sasha, can we also add this up that because I'm Sasha, I would prefer early economy over anything else? Because about what I hear, I believe early economy can be actually really, really strong with Sasha, and I never really realized because I always thought because she has better funds than any other seals early in the game, I did not thought it was that important. But now I realize the city skip I did, maybe they did hurt my early economy because I'm Sasha.
Yeah, it probably did hurt it. This would be true for any CEO, of course. For Sasha in particular, like early economy openings are a lot stronger
Okay.
because, yeah, you do want to put in that pressure, yes, with like fast tanks and all. Um, but to get to that stage, you need to have like an economy to speak of. So yeah, that's why like early economy openings, Sasha has like a lot of ideas around them.
Okay, that's something I just learned after playing maybe 50 or 60 Sasha games.
All
I
right, let's go
always
to a
played
couple
her
of them.
wrong then.
Yeah, we're basically both doing more or less similar things, other than like this little inefficiency you had on the bottom left. You build a fast artillery. I think you saw my artillery and kind of just decided to mirror me. That's completely fine.
Yeah, that's the exact reason.
Hmm. Nothing really important here to speak of, like standard infantry builds. Um, we're both kind of doing the same thing more or less. Okay, so you went for a fast tank on the right side. That's interesting. Did you have like any particular ideas with that,
I
or
like
you just saw
tank opening. Usually I open with tanks. Yes, in this map I open with artillery because of the recon, but
like,
usually on most maps I do open with tanks. Now, here's my
I mean, yeah,
reasoning. Recon are good mid game and late game. Early in the game, in my own opinion, Recons are not impressive because they get shut down by tanks and mechs. And yes, intel is important, but I feel like tank can hold your line longer than Recon. Recon are there for intel, and tank they are more aggressive and they still give you intel because they got tree vision. So I think in Fug, in my own opinion, opening with a tank is better than opening with a recon. Now there's one exception, it's Storm. When I play Storm, I don't open tank, I always open recon because his recon are broken in any maps. They just don't give a F, they go wherever they want. So that's the thing. When I'm not Sturm, I prefer to open tank over recon.
I mean, yeah, that's completely fine, and I 100% agree on this map. Like, I would also open like artillery into tank. I think that's essentially what I did. My question more is like, why did you decide the tank on the right side instead of the left side? Like that's the interesting thing to me.
Uh, I really don't know. Like I was like, is Rickon is still there, so he will see me creating the tank. So I think my thought process was I create my tank there, so he's not able to see it so far. Maybe I will surprise him or something. I think this is the only reason why I would go for this space because I knew you were good. So I was like, maybe if I do sneaky stuff, I can be good. I think that was my thought process.
I mean, I think like if the subs did not exist, this might be fine. But the fact that the subs exist means like I will see the tank pretty fast, and then I'll be able to react in time anyway. The other thing is like because I know what your funding looks like more or less based on my own funding, and then like adding 10%, right? The fact that you didn't build a tank here automatically tells me like you built a tank here.
uh,
So even if you try to hide the build, you can't really hide the build, right?
or
And
maybe
that's
I
why like
bought a Recon. Maybe I bought a Recon. You don't know I don't like Recon.
I mean, yeah, that's true. But like, regardless of like it's a recon or tank, I know like there should be a vehicle here, or it's an infantry. And so like those kinds of things, like even if you try to hide them because they're starting vision, you actually can't hide them versus very strong players. Like
Okay,
the absence of a build is in itself a clue as to what you did.
okay. Maybe I went for the airport really fast to get a sneaky battlecopter out.
That's also possible, yeah. But based on like the timing of these cities, I actually know you did, right? Because you went for like the first infantry here instead of here. So this airport is actually never gonna cap faster than my airport. So that's why like I know all of these things.
You're too
I just like
smart.
yeah, like I just basically like at high levels when you're trying to like capture information, this is what you're basically doing. Like you do a kind of viable opening, you look at what your opponent did differently, and then you kind of like try to run through like what are the possible things he could have done, right? So because
Yeah.
he went here instead of here, that means like airport is slower than mine, so there's no airport. Infantry here at this timing, and it's a Sasha means there's a recon or a tank on the right side, and then my sub will see it, so it's probably fine. So there's all of these like subconscious things you're doing. Very important note here. I fired with the artillery first before moving this infantry, so like I keep my vision on it, and I doesn't really matter, I guess, because like I can build this infantry will spot it, but it's just like a minor efficiency thing in case you mess up with this movement, for example.
Yeah. I always do that because it's very important to shoot and then move.
The other thing I note here is like I do like a kind of different thing. Instead of capping this city immediately, I opt to like let this infantry that came from here do the capping there, and this infantry heads towards the center. Um, Basically, I was thinking at this point, you built a vehicle here, and there might be some early pressure on this side. So maybe I want to capture these a bit earlier before whatever vehicle here can try to interrupt.
Yeah.
And then I'll like just build a tank follow up so that even if you hit them, you get hit back and like it doesn't really do enough.
Yeah.
That was kind of thought process at this time. Just capping a bunch of other stuff, send more infantry forward, and then like this is the major deviation between us. I send my B boat back, ready to accelerate two of these infantry forward. You keep your B boat on your HQ, I believe,
Yeah, I
and
keep it
then
the entire game because I felt like most of the maps with black bolts, at least in my level, if we can call it that way, most of the time people will leave their HQ exposed, do lose because of that. So I'm like, I won't do that kind of mistake. But then after we spoke about that, I realized black bolt can be really good only if your opponent decide to do the same. If you're the only player that does it, now it can go either way. Now you took a huge early advantage over me, but in other cases, if you don't use properly your black bolt, then it's just a waste, and you just leave your HQ open.
Yeah, I think like the two COs, I would consider leaving the black boat on HQ. Probably first is Sasha because she has that plus 10% anyway. And if you commit to like a really fast HQ race, it's possible like the B boat saves you. The other CO I'd consider it for is Javier because a Javier B boat on an HQ is ridiculously hard to remove. Artillery
Yeah,
basically do like one or two damage to it. It's like
three.
four shots to kill.
It does three. I
Yeah,
know
it's
it because
painful and
I
like
played a lot against Javier.
yeah, and like the comp towers aren't really contestable. So Javier I think would be an okay pick on this map to be honest. Uh but yeah, I just went Hawk here instead. No real reason for my Hawk pick to be honest. Just felt like it at the time.
May I pick Sasha because I like Sasha a lot. I think her and Rachel are clearly my favorite seals from Dual Strike. I do like Kindle a lot, and I main her as tier 3, but I feel like Rachel and Sasha are just amazing to play. They are very fun.
Yeah, Rachel is like super fun. In Fog, she's a bit less strong, but it's also like kind of hard, or maybe not hard, but kind of annoying to play versus her, especially with like the missiles. And especially like if Sasha, I mean Rachel decides to hold her missiles. Like to me, that's the sign of like a really strong Rachel player. Someone
Really?
who knows, yeah, when to like not fire the SCOP, force the opponent to split their army up, and then you just like kill small parts of their army who can't support each other. If they ever try to like smash their whole army into you, then you fire the missiles and they die. So like there are certain
Whoa!
ideas like that with Rachel.
I think it's the same thing with Von Bolt because the other day I fought a Von Bolt. That guy was just really strong and he was destroying my Hawke plays, and at some point I see him holding his ex machina, and I'm like, why is he doing it? But then I realize I'm behind him anyway, so I think he waited until a dead ball happened, and boom, the ex machina happened.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. So like when you have a unit count advantage or a space advantage as like a missile CO, so that's Von Bolt, Sturm, Rachel. Um, being knowing when you can hold your superpower and just like using the threat of it to push smaller and smaller incremental advantages is really strong. It's more of like a high level skill, but yeah, like when I see like a Rachel holding their SCOP, like I know I'm in for like a really annoying game, and I have to start like calculating every turn. Like they'll spend 5 minutes to move, and I have to spend like an hour in the move planner just to like figure out is this an okay formation for her missiles, and then you have to do that for like 3, 4 turns in a row. It's a huge headache. Like if you get lazy, lose.
You just give up at some point. You're like, yo,
Yeah.
hit me with it. I'm ready for it.
So okay. Here I unload here. I think there was an idea for me where I load this infantry into the B boat and then move it here. But I made a mistake with this infantry that came from the airport. It should have gone to the left to capture this city if I wanted to do that. So I would still do this just to unload, but it is a minor inefficiency, and technically this infantry does nothing anymore, like heading towards the center. It's a bit more unit presence, but it's not as good as if I just sent it here. So this could get boosted more towards here. Part of the reason for that is because if I'm accepting already the premise that this is my strong side on the right, then these cities will all eventually become mine anyway. But stuff here towards the center, like starting from like my HQ, for example, up to like this mountain, none of these cities are necessarily mine. Like if you play a really aggressive game here, I'm not sure if I can take any of those cities. So like getting them early is like my safest bet to secure that income.
Okay, that's good to know. And by experience in this map, because I played a lot in this map lately, uh, these cities, here
Mhm.
and there, they are very, very contested. and I'm very surprised because usually you're led to believe this is your side and this is your opponent's side. But by experience, these four buildings are really highly contested.
So yeah, the reason for that, right, is like if you are committing heavily on this side, for example, um, it's hard for like these bases to reinforce this area. Just like if we count the number of moves, it takes like 3 moves to get here, and there's always the threat of like this base getting cut off, so it's hard to like consolidate. From this side, I think it takes also like 4 moves, so it's even longer. Whereas these three can flow very naturally into the center, consolidating at the same time and then pushing. So it's because of like that slow infantry movement coupled with like the dynamic of having a lot of production that can move towards to threaten it means that these aren't really safe cities. So they become naturally contested. So you have the right idea, right? Like you have to cut the map in half, but how you cut that line is not always gonna be a straight line or like a straight horizontal or vertical line. In a lot of maps, it's gonna be more of like kind of diagonal. And on this map, I'd say like the line of contest is something like this, like something along this line, like from this mountain to this mountain. That's kind of where you could say is your territory versus my territory. Of course, like a couple of these cities can flip hands, like they're all near the line of contest, so these are all kind of contested. Mm, Okay, yeah. So I see the tank here with my sub. I think I decide to move it here, just to get like some more extra vision on like how you might be moving this tank in this area. Um, I was conscious my tank was a bit slower, so just wanted to know how to position my forces a bit better. But it's a really minor thing.
Yeah.
Um, you do basically the same things, like you're capping pretty correctly, like no B-boat, of course. I think this is a mistake, like the AA towards the left. Um, because my airport is on the right side, like this anti-air is gonna go here to hit infantry. Like
I think my thought process was you got a sub, and I don't want you to know I have an anti-air. But I think later on the game I move it toward this way. I think if I sent it there, it's because I forgot I wanted to send it there.
okay, so if the idea is like avoid subvision, that's probably fine. But yeah, I think like later on in the game, it comes to a point where like I secured this area too fast, and like the
Yeah,
anti-air couldn't even come in and engage, right? And so it couldn't do its job, and that's why like generally I'd send the anti-air this direction. Yes, the sub sees it and like the copter ship price is gone, but it also means like none of my copters will ever dare attack you on this side, and then the
yeah,
anti-air kind of does its job, right? Like it just stops air from being too much of a threat.
that's good to know.
Okay, you built a free con here. Interesting. I think it's an okay idea. Although I think I would have built the recon from here instead.
Why?
Um, basically, like you only build the recon in an area you want to play really aggressive on. Here, maybe if you thought you could be aggressive, sure. But I think early on, like you're gonna have infantry on these mountains anyway to see quite a bit of distance. So unless like you wanted vision here, the recon won't be able to do much. Uh, and then yeah, you followed it up with like a tank on the extreme left side. If you want to do like play here, then maybe the tank here is much stronger, and then like another infantry here. That would also be fine. Um,
Usually in this map, I keep that base for my infantry build, but that's just usually. And my reasoning behind that, well, I want constant unit on both sides to reinforce my forces there, and that base there is just to ferry infantry because I'm the kind of player that likes to have a good economy, so I'm making sure I always have infantry on the board.
yeah, that's completely fair. Like, I think it's a fairly good habit for lower elo players to have one base continuously pumping infantry, even if you can afford to build like three tanks. You should just build two and build an infantry. But that's
Sometime I go for the three tanks when I know I'm ahead of my opponent, or when there's a stalemate. When there's a stalemate, I go for three tanks, or when I know I'm already ahead of him, then I go for three tanks.
yeah, that's fair. And yeah, like three tanks isn't bad per se. I mostly say that to lower elo players because they have a habit of throwing away their infantry too much, so end up never having enough. But like at higher level plays, and like if you know how to preserve your infantry, you don't have to follow that rule. Like it's not necessarily gonna make you a stronger player if you follow it. It's just better if you like have a habit of like not having enough infantry around.
I laugh because it's so funny in Fish We Map on my tier of level. Most of the time when I meet 700 or 800, I always win on Fishui if they are 700 or 800 because they all do the stupid stuff to be overly aggressive on a building that should be mine, and they always lose bunch of infantry, and sometimes I just message them and tell them you already lost, and then a few days later you lose.
Yeah, that's a pretty common like habit some lower players have. They'll try to be too aggressive with like the economy and like try to get greedy, and it's not necessarily wrong. But if you're throwing away too much unit count and like unit value for like one or two cities, that's not going to be worth it.
But even if
I mean,
you throw away three infantry or two infantry, these infantry, if they get wiped out, this is unit count that suffer there, and you won't have map presence. So even if you throw away infantries that were only 1k, it's still very bad if you lose them, which is most of the case in Feishui when I see some beginner just rushing my building.
yeah, that's definitely true. There are like certain scenarios where like it's okay. So for example, if it's like your two base side and you throw away infantry for their infantry and like you capture a city, that's fairly okay because yes, you might be slightly down in unit count from those trades, but they're never gonna be able to reinforce as fast as you. So
Yeah.
in those kind of scenarios and maps, it can be okay. Although obviously that's not what's happening in your games because it sounds like they're just kind of yeeting units into you. um, so yeah,
Meat grinder, like one of my comment in one of my videos said that I did meat grinder.
okay. Let's see here. Fairly normal moves. Things moving forward. Okay. Build another tank here. And then the artillery towards the right side. So I guess your idea with this is you kind of want more presence in the center as opposed to the side.
Yeah, and more than this, I know it's an artery and I don't want to expose it too much. When I expose my artery, it's because I have a wall, and here right now at that point in the game, I don't have enough unit to create a wall, so I'm really worried a early recon or early tank just shows up and shut down my artery. Usually I leave my artery behind and I try my best to hide them, even if I know my opponent knows I have an artery. I try my best to hide them to get max value before they are shut down. Because if you just send them on the front line without any wall, you will just lose your artery, and this is a really bad move. You just wasted 6k just for fun.
Yeah, so I think that's a fairly reasonable thing to do. The only thing here is like because of this subvision, and like this is why I'm putting this artillery so far forward with like nothing to wall in front of it, why I'm so confident, is that basically I'm kind of confident, and actually this was a mistake. Like if you put an infantry here, you could have shot my artillery, I guess. I think you did do this. But like the point is because you have subvision, you know immediately like how many vehicles are here. And so even if your artillery is a bit more forward than usual, it's fine because it's not as if a tank, from this forest can hit an artillery here, right? Like the tank would have to be
Yeah,
here. And like I don't have a tank there because you've been watching my infantry the whole time.
yeah.
So like that's the one bit of advice I'd give. Like don't underestimate like these kinds of early vision because they allow you to play a lot more aggressively than you'd otherwise think in fog.
Yeah. My other worries is also attack coming from the right side of the map. So that's also why I yes I sent my artillery toward right, but there are so many obstacles that it will be hard for any unit to beat it.
Okay. So here you can see like I'm already beginning to posture my entire army to like cut this area off.
Yeah,
Because you played like a slightly more defensive thing, you're nowhere near able to do that. Maybe you could bring like these two tanks in, like this tank far forward, this tank here to like support artillery somewhere here. But it's just like 1 to 2 turns always gonna be slower than my attack, which is already starting to happen. And like these cities are already being pressured. Like this you will never get now. This you might get if you throw away enough units, but it would be a bad trade.
yeah.
Here, like these two cities are basically have almost no pressure. And I was actually surprised when I put this infantry and I saw like where did all his vehicles go? So at this point I was thinking like, okay, maybe all his vehicle builds are here, but I'm not seeing anything with the sub, so maybe it's in the center. I was already like starting to think of like what do I need to do here? But at this point I still felt pretty safe.
Confusion.
Okay, fairly reasonable. Walling with all your units. And I think from this turn onward, like we start to see the unit difference between us, or like the income difference between us, just based solely on the fact like this B boat moving or not moving.
Yeah,
Like I already have 20,000 here. You have 19,800, but you're a Sasha and I'm a Hawk, so like basically this should never happen where I have more income than you.
yeah.
Um, for that reason, I think like the B boat is forced because like if even Sasha can't make it work, then it's kind of doomed. Mm, another copter. Oh yeah, I take a free hit there because obviously no anti-air, so felt pretty safe with that. Um, fast medium tank. Okay, this is interesting. What made you build a fast medium tank on this map?
I like taking up fast. I don't know if it's good or bad. I just like it because I'm Sasha, and in my mind, I think I'm the first player that has a medium tank as well. So it has some punch before anything contests with it. But at that point, I also didn't know. I think I didn't know you had a battle capture, or I forgot you had a battle capture. I don't know what happened. Anyway, I do like medium tank a lot, especially early in the game. Usually day 10 or 9 depends on the map. Sometime a bit later when I need vision, but usually between day 9 to day 11, if I got the money, I take up.
Yeah, there are some like high level players who like to do that. Like Djus, in my mind, really loves fast medium tanks. The problem I'd say with like a fast medium tank in this game is we both went for artillery very early. So you know like I have an artillery somewhere here already.
Yeah.
And like building a medium tank into that feels kind of bad. I would probably have built the medium tank
On the
here
other side.
instead. Yeah, on the other side, because like this artillery build by me, I don't know if it's actually good. But like the funds made sense at the time is the only reason I did it. But I don't know if like artillery on this side is actually good.
Yeah.
And like you have the vision, so you know where it is. And like that pairs well with like the medium tank being able to do things.
Yeah.
And like it's hard for the artillery to break out of this area. I did it later on in this game, but like it took so much setup, and that's also why medium tank is good here because if like your unit, if my units ever leave this kind of small area that the artillery covers, it's just a free hit for the medium tank, right? Like even if it's completely alone, it can just free hit everything. So that's why I think you should have built it here instead. Okay. So you decide to do something kind of suspicious here. You just did like a full attack um, into like into my like army here. You did get a hit on the artillery, which is okay, but it's
Artillery
also
are
like
dangerous. Shut
yeah,
them down.
but it's also like the most worthless unit essentially we could say in my army. Um, and like you only hit one vehicle, quote unquote, and it's like the most useless in the fight, you could say. I mean, I guess it's okay with like the medium tank idea, so that makes it a little bit better. But if this was a normal tank, I would say maybe just kill the recon,
Yeah.
send a recon to hit the artillery, something like that, right? Um,
But I don't think I
and then
had the
waste the
mobility. I don't think the Raycon had the reach. Because Raycon
oh, it
are
didn't.
very limited.
Let's look at this again.
Ah, it did.
It should have
Okay.
been able to hit, yeah.
Okay.
So that's personally what I would have done. And here also like the fact that this anti-air is not able to like head towards the right side very easily because like you have no vision here. This is kind of like why I said a few turns back the anti-air should have maybe have went swung this way, so like
Yeah.
this copper wouldn't be as free. All of these tanks would be covered. Like right now, the problem is even if this anti-air moves here, some of these units are not going to get covered, and so this coupler gets another free hit in.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll speed through these attacks again. We've seen these. Then yeah, like you take one artillery hit, but it's actually super bad for you because it's a 6k unit, but you committed a tank, and the tank probably dies because there's another tank back here.
Yeah.
That's a fairly safe assumption to make, even if you don't see anything. Like I probably have a tank here, because from what you've seen on the left side, like I've only had a tank and artillery and like a lot of infantry. And yeah, so that's why I'd say like you should be pretty confident I have a tank here.
You
And
know
like you
there.
see, I've
You know, there's a meme about the artificial intelligence in the first Advance Wars game that keep aiming for APC. They like to kill APC, while my allergy is to kill artillery. Throw an artillery, I will kill it, bro. It's the perfect bait for me. It's like you want to bait me, throw an artillery somewhere, I will take the bait.
okay. So after that, like because I won these two cities for free, because you didn't posture aggressively, and on this side, like you didn't take them. Like I already have a huge income lead at this point. It looks
Not
even,
that
but
huge. It's pretty even. But because I'm
yeah,
Sasha.
it looks even because you're Sasha, but Sasha shouldn't ever be even in income because that's her
Yeah.
only advantage.
Yeah.
Uh, so just moving some more units around. At this point, I was starting to wonder like where your army went, like because like, I didn't see anything here, so I was a bit curious. Um, and then yeah, I just like kill one of your tanks. I get another first hit. I'm pretty sure.
At that point, I already lost the game.
It wasn't like completely lost yet, but it was already like pretty bad for you. And then we'll get into like the main thing that I want to teach viewers, which is like the art of front switching. And this is like a very high level skill in fog, but it's very crucial once you go up the ladder. So what is a front switch? A front switch is basically you send all your units in one area, like all your vehicles, all your copters, right?
Yeah.
Anything that moves fast. Once it wins in one area, instead of pressing forward, which is what a lot of lower skill players will do, don't do that. Just send those vehicles to the other side of the map, where you're presumably weaker, right? Unless your opponent threw the game, and
Yeah.
then kill their army there, right? And like whatever gains they made there, if they overextend even slightly, because your army is coming to reinforce really fast, they have to pull back. If they don't pull back, they lose units, and then you win the game.
Yeah.
If you pull back, then you get some breathing space here, and maybe you can just like swing back into like where you left, right? So like the threat of moving towards a center in a map like this is very strong because of that. Um, it also lets you merge your two small armies here. together. Like if you move here, if I move here, for example, and this moves back, these can all move to the center, and then I have just one big blob in the center. You have two small blobs on the left and the right, right? And so it becomes much harder for you to fight into me because your armies aren't together. Like you'd have to coordinate for them to like converge on me at the same time, which
Yeah,
is much harder to do than if you just have like one big blob together. So
yeah.
that's kind of what the idea with the front switch is. Okay, so you take out the tank. Probably the best you could have done at that point. Interrupted the cap, and like here, I start to see you attacking into me in the center. And at that point, like I was realizing, okay, so there's some HQ cap ideas here
Yeah,
because you have
that's
so many
what I
units.
went for because I
Here.
knew I lost.
Yeah, and at that point, like I was already realizing, okay, he knows I don't have the B boat on the HQ because of the sub, so like this is the only possible play he can make. And because he lost this fight on the right side, and I know I have an income advantage because you didn't move your B boat. I was already pretty sure like I've probably won this game as long as I don't lose the game with the HQ. So that was why, like at this point, I think I was already deciding I can just move all my units towards the HQ surely and stop this. And I was already preparing to like counteract this movement. And then you built a rocket here, which is probably disastrous.
I wanted to kill your
Yeah,
sub, I think. That's why I did it.
you could have used an artillery for that, right? Like it would have kind of done the same thing.
I
The
got the
problem with the
money.
rocket.
I got the money. That's how we rock it.
Yeah, the problem here, right, is like because you're putting all your hopes on this army pushing here, you just need to like build a bunch of tanks and copters on this side and just start streaming everything in. Even like not building any infantry at all is completely fine in this scenario because you're no longer saying like I'm gonna win on income and play a long game, right? You're saying it's either I cap the HQ now or I basically lose anyway, so you don't even have to build any infantry now. You just build tanks or copters, maybe even like a neo tank, anything that's fast to get to the front very fast and give you like that extra punch.
Yeah.
Infantry no longer are good because they will never arrive here in time anyway. Like by the time they arrive, you either won or lost the game, so it doesn't matter. Rocket for the same reason is bad. Like, why are you trying to like kill the sub or like contest things here when you're already committing to this? And because you have the B boat, I'm not gonna win the HQ race, especially since you hit my artillery, right? Like, there's no way I'm gonna cap your HQ
Yeah.
in any time where you can cap mine. So like that's not an issue. So like the rocket doesn't do that. The rocket might deny these, but why bother? Like an artillery can do kind of the same thing here, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I say rocket is really bad. And in general, I don't like rocket fog. I think it's too niche. It's too slow. Same
True.
problems with the medium tank, although medium tank being a heavy tank is slightly better. But yeah, rocket I think is disastrous. um,
At that point, I made peace with my loss.
And then you build a T-Coupler here, which I don't hate. Probably to like reinforce infantry to this area faster. If like
Yeah,
you've committed to that, then that's fine. Although I think like
exactly.
2 tank copter is like much better. I think you do have enough money for that. 14 plus 9 is 23. Yeah, you
Yeah.
should have enough money for 2 tanks and a copter each turn. Just flood this area. At this point, like I knew you basically shouldn't have enough units here anymore anyway, so I do some kind of aggressive moves here to like take out your vision, and then everything else is beginning to position kind of in this area, preparing to like defend the HQ. And because I know like you have some army here, it's probably gonna push here. At that point, like I can do like a pincer attack, and wipe out that last remaining threat, and then I just win the game. And then just trading some infantry here. It was kind of free anyway, which is why I did it. Here, you
I had
probably
no
didn't watch the
vision.
replay because you killed this copter.
Yeah,
You could
this.
have put
I
the
had.
tank here, right, and
Yeah.
killed the copter. So yeah, you probably just a small movement error.
Yeah.
Would have been nice to get the copter kill. Uh,
This is a desperate player doing stuff.
yeah, I don't think I would have taken that hit, but it's probably fine. Is it? Let's see, 1600 for 1 HP versus 900. It's like an even trade. No, it's slightly better for you. It's 1600 for you, 1800 for me. But I'm Hawk, so I'll heal it up anyway. Maybe not good. Yeah, I'm not too sure about this one. It might be good, it might be like completely bad. It's hard to say.
It's a losing man doing stuff.
Um, Here I don't think I'd bother with the recon at all.
I
Um,
needed vision.
I guess you want vision, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe just another tank would have been fine. Anyway, you're not gonna push out here very easily. Um, Here you're continuing to like consolidate towards the center, which is probably fine. But like at this point, like if you had 2 extra tanks, right, and a copter every turn, you'd have like
You good dead ball.
5 tanks here already, right? And like that would have been a serious threat. 2 tanks and artillery, an AA and a copter, and like a bunch of infantry is not that scary, considering what I have in the area.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then at this point, like you can see like some of the ideas I was talking about much earlier, where I just like send an artillery with some infantry, and I'm already like have cutting off these units from ever being important. So you have 16 plus 15, it's like 31. Plus 8, 39, plus a recon. So you have like 40 something thousand worth of units here that are effectively neutralized by like 10,000, right? Like 1 artillery and like 4 infantry, 3 infantry, 9,000 are able to shut down 40,000 units worth of value. And then the rest are just like contributing to like the only fight that matters now, which is the HQ fight.
Yeah.
So even if like this HQ fight wasn't happening, this would still be like a really strong move. And like I think this is one of the powerful mid game ideas on this map, where you just shut this area off with like some artillery and some infantry, and then you concentrate your forces. So I think the player who can do that and prevent themselves from getting cut off is usually in a really strong winning position.
Yeah.
Um,
And now
yeah,
you slowly kill
at this
my
point, like
wall.
I'm just oh sorry, yeah. So I did like kind of a big attack here. It was kind of sad I wasn't able to get power, but it is what it is. We kind of just start trading here. It was slightly okay trades for both of us. I don't think it mattered that much. Like the attack order you did seemed fine to me. Um, yeah, but at this point, like second T copter is not great. You already have one anyway. You
Yeah.
really needed just like more tanks and copters at this point, and this is why like your push died so fast.
Yeah.
If you had more tanks and copters, this might have succeeded, or like been a lot scarier at least. But because you weren't reinforcing anything, and I was like, I was throwing 4 bases worth of production at you every turn, and you weren't reinforcing. Like every turn we play from this point onwards, it's already winning for me. Like your attacks are just gonna get weaker, my defense is just gonna get stronger, and then I'll win the game because I have the income advantage
Yeah.
and the CO advantage and like the geographical advantage of like having cut off part of your army. So like
Yeah.
all these advantages are starting to accumulate in my favor. And then yeah, like after that turn, I think you just lost. I
Yeah, I
think you resigned
resigned.
after this.
Yeah, I resigned.
Yeah, because like you just didn't have any units left anyway.
I think I resigned here.
Yeah, so you're signed here. So like yeah, that we're rewinding like a few turns, right? So like the this is like the main idea of a front switch. Like you win in one area, you force it back, and then you move your army to another area. So like what happens if you don't force this army back, right? Like for example, if you still had like a few infantry here, a few tanks, and like you had vision on what I was doing, what you would have done, if you were playing correctly, right? The moment I move my units here, you just send your infantry forward to like capture all these cities.
Yeah.
Maybe you send your tanks kind of slightly towards here to like help reinforce.
Yeah.
And that's why like the push and pull kind of idea in front switching has to be done correctly, right? Like you can't just switch your entire army immediately. You have
Yeah.
to like force your opponent back slightly before you can do that. Otherwise, they'll just kind of occupy the area you just left. And because you're moving and they're not, like they're gonna eat cities here, and maybe they can just run away here. And then, they're in an okay position to play on. Like you didn't actually get anything from that front switch. But at that point, right, like because you're eating cities here, I would have to like kind of answer to your aggression here, while
Yeah.
also keeping in mind like you still have an army here. So like a front switch can be very dangerous in those scenarios. It has to be you want to get like some tempo lead before you do it. You could say.
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah, so yeah, this was a pretty basic front switch maneuver. At higher level plays, it becomes really complex because they'll know what you did, and so they'll all like even without seeing it, like really strong players like Regis and Go 7 have like this sixth sense almost of like where your army is, even if they don't see anything, and so
They
like
have
they
an
pull
idea.
back even if they don't see anything. It's hard to catch them off guard. So in those cases, like we might see like 3, 4 front switches before someone gets completely wiped out, or sometimes they just do it once and then you die.
Yeah.
Go 7 in particular, like he's the highest rated, although I wouldn't say he's the strongest necessarily. Bug player at the moment. He's like a really really strong advocate of front switch. Like he's basically mastered it at this point, in my opinion, and he's the one who taught me like the main ideas behind this technique.
That's good. That's very good.
Did you have any other questions?
Not really, man. That was very fun. A good teaching experience with front switch. Is it all you call it?
Yep, front switch.
Yeah, that's very good to learn, and that's also good to know that NTR, even if the opponent knows it, you don't care. They're just there to zone out.
Yeah, exactly. There are some ideas with like hiding it on some maps, but in general, even if it's seen, it's fine. The only risk there is maybe they throw the copter across the map where the anti-air isn't, but because like the airports are on opposite diagonals on this map, you can always kind of rely on your own copters to answer it, and like they're kind of suicidal if they get into a copter war near their airport. Like they're not gonna win. So that's kind of what you're banking on.
So that was a very fun game. Even if I knew I would lose, that was very fun. Is there anything else you would like to add up?
No, I think you played that actually like much better than our last game together. So you've definitely improved in my opinion. You were a lot less like aggressive with certain attacks, although like your first attack on the right side was still, kind of reckless in my opinion. It was better executed than like in our last game where we kind of just threw tanks at my infantry.
That's good to know. That's good to know. That since that time, I probably played over 50 game, maybe 100. I really don't know. I have like 50 game in going right now.
That's a lot of games.
Yeah, I play a lot. I created a lot of alternate accounts just to have more games, and because I wanted a different account with only one faction. So, for example, I got a Smurf with only Orange Star Seal, a Smurf with only Blue Moon, all the colors.
That's interesting. Usually when I make like these alts, they're kind of challenge accounts. Like I'll only play one CO, usually like a low tier CO, and I'll see how far I can get with it. So I have one with Jess and I have one with Grim. Um, I plan to make one with Andy, but I haven't gotten around to it, and I probably never will.
It's so sad when your Blue Moon account barely plays Blue Moon because 2 out of the 4 Blue Moon are in tier 1, and the third one is tier 2, and sometimes he's banned.
Yeah. Full Moon has a lot of like really strong CEOs.
So anyway, I hope guys enjoyed, and as I said last time, you should create your own channel. That could be interesting, even if you don't have like the best equipment around. I think your ideas can really sell a good channel there. And yeah, you're a good player, so I'm pretty sure you would have a good fan base.
Maybe, yeah, something to consider when I have more time.
That's good. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, and subscribe. We will see each other in future video. Have a great day.